Outlet Liquor is your place to buy a case. Stock up and save when you shop the lowest prices available every day at Outlet Liquor. You never have to wait for a sale. The more you buy, the more you save. Only at Outlet Liquor.
What's your outlet?
Welcome, everybody, to episode 138 of Two Goalies, One Mic. I am Duane, and I'm also joined by Connor Hurley. Hurls, I think we missed last week, right?
Yeah, we did. Not much news going on, but we're back.
Well, not a lot going on last week, but since then, definitely some noteworthy stuff, especially today. Obviously, we're going to kind of, what would they say? Cross the streams, little Ghostbusters action here and talk some Bills after last night's interesting loss, to say the least. And obviously some other news that also obviously affects you, whether you're a Sabres or a Bills fan. But first and foremost, via the Spittin Chiclets podcast today, Paul Bissonette, better known as Biz, and Ryan Whitney, kind of, I wouldn't say broke the hockey internet today, but broke some news on their latest podcast about Mike Babcock, former Detroit Red Wings coach and Toronto Maple Leafs current coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I don't really know where to go with this, man, because there's a lot of different reports over the last couple hours, and I'm not sure how much you've looked into it, Hurls, but there's definitely some noteworthy stuff in here, right? I mean, like, we know how his tenure in Toronto ended, real ugly breakup between the two, and he hasn't been in pro hockey since, up until this season, when he's been pretty much gifted a second chance. So what do you make of all this?
So as just a little bit of background, basically, it is alleged that Mike Babcock, the new coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets, took players' phones in their introductory meetings in the offseason and asked to see their camera roll and pictures on their phone that they had recently, that they had throughout their history, or I'm not sure how far back, but allegedly he wanted to see pictures on the phones of the players on his team to find out what type of person they are, which, for a variety of different reasons, if that is true, is extremely weird, very off-putting, and based upon, I guess, what you heard about Mike Babcock's tenure with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the way that he treated people in the locker room and how his tenure ended, potentially not that surprising. So I guess when this news dropped today, I think a lot of people are like, wow, that sounds like Mike Babcock. Like, this guy is a narcissist. He seems to have rubbed a lot of people the wrong way off the ice throughout his career. Largely, I think it's pretty much accepted that he's a really good hockey coach, or at least he was for a little bit, both with the Maple Leafs and Team Canada and throughout his time coaching hockey. But with something like this, it's almost unheard of, and it speaks to who he allegedly is as a person. Now, the Blue Jackets and Mike Babcock have flat out denied that this happened. They specifically even mentioned Spittin Chiclets by name in their statement, which I thought was really interesting. They usually would just come out with a generic statement addressing the story, but they went right at it. So who's to say? I wasn't in that room. I we weren't in those meeting rooms, so we don't know exactly what happened. But Mike Commodore, former player who played for Mike Babcock, came out and said that this type of thing happened with him.
Yeah.
And that's as good of an indication as any. So I'm not really sure what to think other than it seems like there's a pattern here with Mike Babcock.
Yeah.
So
he's very old school. That's for sure, right? Like he's just, invasive for sure. I'm not going to deny that he has a great hockey mind. He is. There's no denying it. The guy has an immaculate track record behind the bench. And whether you want to say it's because of those great Red Wings teams he coached, how good they were, anybody could have coached them, whatever. He has a great track record both in the NHL and at the international level. No doubt about it. But as time changes and things evolve, you have to kind of learn how to evolve with them. And Mike Babcock really never has evolved. And, compared to when me and you were growing up playing hockey, the way things were done compared to the way they are now, it's much different in the way you handle players, the way you develop players, the way you talk to players, the way you discipline players. It's a lot different nowadays. And for better or worse, I've always heard the quote, as a society, you have to sometimes walk as slow as your slowest person, to try and keep things moving along. And it's just the way it is sometimes, whether you agree with it or you don't. It's just the way society is. That's the way we have to go about life. And Mike Babcock hasn't done that. And now with this, and I just want to say how weird of a position Boone Jenner hasn't been put in, because that guy just wants to play hockey, right? Like, he just wants to be the captain. He wants to play hockey. And now he's been kind of tossed into this situation where he's got to stick up for his coach, a guy who he just recently, I'm sure it's not the first time they've met, but it's one of the first times, like, hey, he's actually called him coach. Like, this is my coach. And now you see him going out of his way to, like, kind of stick up for his coach, and they haven't even dropped the puck yet. So I definitely feel for him. Here's my take on it. I mean, if all the players are cool with it, which allegedly Paul Bissonnette says they aren't, but if this is just a situation where you're kind of pulling up a few pictures over the offseason, but if you're, like, looking at his phone and you're scrolling through it, like being, invading that player's privacy and doing more than, what you initially told you were going to do, then absolutely, man. Like, that is insane. No. Like, I'm sorry, dude. Like, that you should not be doing that. No way. But if this is just looking at a few pictures that the player says, yeah, check out, this is my wife, my family, my kids, that's fine. Like, yeah, I show pictures of my nephew, my godson all the time. I don't care who it is. Like, they're adorable. But if this is a situation where he's going beyond what was permitted, then he needs to be held accountable again. Like, whether it's firing, suspension, having to make a public apology. That's just my take on it. And again, I was interested to see where this went with Columbus. Obviously they got Adam Fantilli in the draft. Was the best college player to come out in NCAA since Jack Eichel. Guy was an absolute electric factory this past year. They have a lot going for them. And have a world-class goalie still in Elvis Merzlikins. I was interested to see what Mike Babcock could do with this roster. And now it's just like, Jesus fucking Christ, man. Can we just move on beyond this? Like, can he just coach? Can he just coach? Can you worry about back checking? You worry about forward check. You worry about a power play, a penalty kill. Like, why are we now talking already, before we even drop the puck, about off-ice stuff with Mike Babcock?
Yeah, this doesn't seem like the type of thing that would get him fired, to be honest. But
I think so.
If this becomes a pattern and there are more off-the-ice issues, like, it absolutely could. And as you said, like, the Blue Jackets are in a really tough position. They hired him in the interest of turning this team around. They obviously really fell below expectations last year after signing Johnny Gaudreau to a massive free agent contract. and they've got a lot of talent and a lot of expectation, given that they haven't really performed well throughout their history. So bringing in a guy like that, who you at least hope will do that this season, potentially give him a shot at the wild card. Yeah, it's troubling to say the least. But yeah, in the interest of not going too far down the road of speculation, who knows? And as you said, if it was true and if it was anything more than like mutual interest or just like a friendly sharing of pictures unprompted by the player or completely their decision to do it, as Boone Jenner said, maybe like his wedding or something, like, oh, like, take a look at this. And it wasn't Mike Babcock specifically asking me like, here, we're in my office now. We're airplaying your phone onto the screen, and you're going to go through your most recent pictures. That feels like allegedly they were being held hostage in an interest of trying to find out something about these players that would have nothing to do with how they're going to perform on the ice. So
yeah, and not to mention, there's probably a lot of private pictures on there too.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
any discussion related to that is just insane. So I hope it's not true. Knowing Mike Babcock, it very well could be.
Definitely a 50-50 shot. It's true.
And yeah, and now that it's out there, it's going to walk on thin ice. No pun intended.
No, it just, again, I remember those Red Wings teams he coached and how good they were. And then, like, I remember when it was down to Buffalo and Toronto as who's going to be the next head coach of the Buffalo Sabres, and how angry Tim Murray was when he was essentially made to believe that Babcock was going to choose Buffalo. And then lucky for us, I mean, I don't even know, honestly. Like, it's not like it went great for Buffalo after that anyway.
We get Dan Bylsma instead, correct?
Dan Bylsma. I don't know. But anyways, yeah. I guess I was really, I want to use the word excited, but I was like, yeah, Mike Babcock in Columbus. Let's see what happens here. Let's see if he, kind of like what Lindy Ruff did. Lindy Ruff was never as extreme as Mike Babcock, but he was a guy who was very old school in Dallas, took some time away from being a head coach, learned to evolve, and now look how well he's doing in New Jersey. You know what I mean? The players seem to love him. They embrace him. I remember when PK Subban was with New Jersey. Like, PK spoke very highly of Lindy, and that's a guy that is very polarizing himself. Kind of thinking, will Mike Babcock be able to evolve in the same respect that Lindy Ruff did with New Jersey and become successful? Right now, I'm going to say no. Like, I'm just going to say no, flat out say no. But if this all tends to be untrue and it really was just, hey, let me see some pictures of your family and kids, I'm interested, then it, that's not that out far-fetched to me. But if it goes beyond that, and to your point, if it's sitting in his office looking up at his, like, asking him players to explain these pictures, then like they're having a background investigation to be with the state police, because that's what I had to do when I was trying to be a New York State police officer. My background, I had an investigator take both my phones, my work phone and my personal phone, and he literally went through all of my videos and all of my pictures, and it was evasive. Like, you didn't realize this coming. It's like, holy shit, like, this is real. He went through all my social media. It was definitely like, yeah, like I felt, I'm not gonna say like, I felt invaded a little bit. Like, those are my private pictures. Those are my private videos. That's my social media. Those are my conversations. He looked at everything. So if it went beyond just looking at pictures of, family and kids, then yeah, I definitely think he needs to be held accountable to some extent. So, but getting past that, obviously, last week, we did not, we kind of decided to put the episode off because we were kind of still waiting on a Dahlin / possibly Owen Power extension to be announced. Still haven't gotten that. We're still waiting. But Andrew Peters from the After the Whistle podcast, formerly of WGR 550, Sabres alumni, did tweet out a rumor that he had heard that Dahlin's going to come in at 8 years at 10.5, which is $500,000 more than what was originally projected for him to sign right on July 1st. And here we are on September 12th, and we're still waiting to find out what, when is this going to get done? When is it going to get announced? Is it going to be with Owen Power? Is it 10-5, 10, 11? What is it going to be? I think the deal's probably been done for a while, personally. I think that they're probably waiting to try and get Owen Power done, especially after the Jake Sanderson deal was announced. Now that they have like a good idea of like a landing point, so to speak, of where they want to get him at, what number. I think they're trying to get both of them done at the same time so they get announced at the same time.
Yeah, I would say so too. Especially in Dahlin's case, like that seems like very, very similar to what we thought in terms of market value. That would put him at the third highest average a year value in terms of defensemen in the league. I think it's behind only Erik Karlsson and Drew Doughty. Obviously, Drew Doughty at this point, probably a little bit above what he deserves to be making at this point in his career, but that's just the contracts that you're given when you're a two-time Stanley Cup winner. Still very good, but he's not at the level of Erik Karlsson and Rasmus Dahlin. And probably a lot of other guys deserve to make more than that. But I think Rasmus Dahlin is very, very deserving of being the third highest paid defenseman in the league, given his age, his projection, and what he's already done. Specifically the last 2 years, both offensively and defensively, what he does for the Sabres is almost unlike any other player in what they contribute to their team in the entire league. He is the linchpin on the power play. He's improved his defensive numbers. Everything about his game has improved. I would say right up there with what he was projected as is the 2018 first overall pick. Everything you imagined about him has come to fruition, and possibly more this season and years beyond that, given the type of team that this is, an offensively driven team. So I don't think anybody should be surprised, upset, frustrated, anything related to Rasmus Dahlin's contract. He deserves this money and he's going to get it. And it's just a matter of when, not if at this point. I've had discussions with friends that maybe they think that they're waiting until training camp to announce it just to get everybody excited for the season. They've done that before. So potentially that's the reason. And then, like you said, Owen Power, I think the Jake Sanderson contract obviously potentially changed his market a little bit. I forget exactly how much a year he was making, something like a little under 8, correct?
I think he came at 8.1.
Okay, a little over 8 then.
Which is like 8.1, which honestly, if you look at their numbers side by side, Jake Sanderson, he was like a minus 15 or something. But I mean, I think Owen Power had a couple more points than Jake Sanderson, but Owen Power was also playing more minutes, and he was like a plus 10 or we have to look at the numbers, but I know people don't take plus minus very seriously, but that's a big difference. We'll just throw this out, minus 10 compared to plus 10. I don't know the numbers exactly. That's a big difference. And that's, that means that's a big, big difference. And I think if you can get, I would say if I were to guess, Owen Power would probably come in around 8.75 for 8 years.
Yeah, I could easily see that. And if it's projection based, like probably not too much more, given that he is 20 years old and still very, very young in his career going into his second season. But yeah, he largely projects to be better than Jake Sanderson, and he already is. So yeah, who knows? Like, I don't necessarily think they should have to announce both at the same time. They are different players. Obviously, similar paths in terms of being number 1 overall picks. But Rasmus Dahlin is your potential future captain. I don't think that you want to risk like potentially making him frustrated by the fact that it hasn't been announced. Like, I don't know if it's done and both sides have agreed upon it. What's the hurt in just like getting it out there? The home opener is a month from tonight on October 12th. You only have so much time to get news out there, especially when there's not much going on right now. I think it would be a big emotional boost for the fan base to know that that's done and relieve any type of concern that like may be out there at this point. Like, I don't think there should be, but you know how people get, especially in Buffalo. So we'll see what happens, but I don't think there's anything to be concerned about. And if it does come in at 8 years, 10.5 a year, it's a great contract. Happy to have him, and yeah, excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. Also, obviously, you have to take into consideration too. I saw some comments like they, expect Owen Power to come in at 9.5. There's just no way I think you're paying Owen Power only 1 million less. I mean, I'm sorry, paying Darlene. You're paying it, you know what I mean? Like, there isn't enough. He hasn't proven enough in his first 2 years to warrant 9.5 million a year, to be paid only 1 million less than, your franchise defenseman. Not saying that Owen Power can't be a franchise defenseman. He's a first overall pick. But there's just no way you're paying that guy only 1 million less than a guy like Darlene, who could be your next captain, who's been a leader and has developed so much under Don Granato. There's just no way that guy's getting 9.5. Not a shot.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That's just not going to happen. It wouldn't be smart financially. It would probably piss Darlene off. Like it would do a lot of different things. But yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that Owen Power isn't a $9.5 million defenseman. I truly think in 2 years from now, he is a $9.5 million defenseman. But right now, you can't justify paying those two guys only, like, what have there been only a $1 million gap between the two of them?
Yeah, no, definitely not. And by the time Power is Darlene's age, like his contract may turn out to be a bargain, which is a good thing. And like sometimes these situations happen when you're the product of who's on your team and who's ahead of you and what the market is at that time. So I don't think Owen Power is going to be pinching pennies about whether he's being paid 8.5 versus 9.5 or 10.5 or anything else. Like he seems like a humble kid, good upbringing. $8.5 million a year in Buffalo, New York makes you one of the richest people in the entire region. So I think it's not that big a deal, and he'll be happy to be on an up and coming team. And by that point, a couple years down the line, hopefully a perennial playoff contender. So I think it'll work out.
We are 30 days away from opening night against the Rangers. Obviously a lot of expectations. A lot of high expectations, whether it comes to, Devin Levi and Nat. The expectations for Tage Thompson going into his third, potential breakout year after having two, 35-plus goal seasons. Darlene, who's the captain. There's so many storylines to write about this team going into next season. But with that being said, we do have development camp and training camp within 2 weeks, like 2 weeks away. And we have been given rosters, so to speak, who will be at development camp, who will be at training camp, who is participating in development camp. We already know that Devin Levi will not be at development camp because he's concentrated on Sabres, on Sabres training camp. Lucas Rusek will not be at development camp because he's concentrating on making the Sabres roster. Who are you looking forward to most to challenge for a spot on this team outside of the obvious, like Kulik, Matthew Savoy, Zach Benson? Are there any kids that kind of stand out to you, Hurls, where you're like, I'd like to see him finally make a run at it? Like, kind of like, what's his face? Weisenbach. Guy's always kind of been there. He's always at development camp. He always seems to perform well enough, but not well enough to get a look like maybe you might expect to see Lucas Rusek get finally to possibly the jump to the main roster.
I would say, given the nature of the team and where the strengths and the weaknesses are, I think the clear weakness last season and the past few years is obviously the defense. And I think the name that a lot of people are excited about as a potential young and intriguing option is Ryan Johnson. If Ryan Johnson can impress at the Prospects Challenge and development camp and training camp and work his way into that sixth defenseman role, in lieu of potentially a guy like Henry Jokiharju, or who knows at this point who's going to be there. But in combination with Eric Johnson and Connor Clifton and Matthias Samuelsson and Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin, if he's able to come in and be that young rookie defenseman for the team this season and perform at a level that I think we all know he's capable of. He was an incredible defenseman at the University of Minnesota. You see his capability in the offensive zone and on the power play. And if he's able to be sound defensively and be a good third pair guy, like I think a lot of people would love for him to win that job.
Yeah.
So
it's a log jam. It's a log jam on that third pairing. Like we really don't know what I think you're safe to say that Eric Johnson is one of those two guys, right? 100%. Sure. You don't sign him. I mean, unless something goes horribly wrong and he pulls Avante Davis on us and is like, you know what, man, I'm just too old. I'm just beyond this. I'm done. But you have Yoki Haru. You have, was it Stillman, right? Stillman?
Yeah.
You have Ryan Johnson going to try and, compete for a spot. Who is it going to be? You shipped off Labushkin. He's gone. So that's one less body you have to worry about. But who is it going to be? Like Henry Yoki Haru is on a legitimate hot seat right now. I don't care what anybody says. That guy should really be feeling the heat right now because it is not a given that he is going to win that position and be on that third pairing. Because I think Connor Clifton is on your second pairing. We already know who the first pairing most likely will be. It'll probably still be Dahlin and Samuelsson to start the season. It's going to be Owen Power and probably Clifton on the second pairing. Who is in the third? Eric Johnson and who? Henry Yoki Haru needs to come in and have the best training camp he's ever had. Because if he doesn't and Ryan Johnson shows flashes, we know that Kevin Adams and Don Granado are not afraid to give their youth a chance to win a roster spot and to be in that starting night, opening night lineup.
Yeah, and as you said, the obvious contender for that 12th or 13th forward spot, obviously Yuri Kulik, Zach Benson, Matthew Savoy. You hear Victor Neuchev's name being thrown around there as a guy with a really high ceiling, a really good shot and scoring ability. Probably not going to make the team this year, but he's at least someone to keep an eye out for. And then up and down that Prospect Challenge roster, there's probably guys you've never even heard of that a lot of the scouts are saying really good things about. The best thing that the Sabres have going for them at this point, aside from the offensive upside of the top of the roster, is the depth of the prospect pool. They've been bad for so long that they've been able to draft and develop a lot of different types of guys playing in leagues all over the world, very good leagues that have produced at very high levels. So to see them all on the ice at the same time in a couple of weeks, I think is going to be really, really interesting. And we'll see who separates themselves. But yeah, the obvious guys, I mean, Yuri Kulik probably has the best chance. Especially with Jack Quinn out for the first half of the season, potentially with his injury.
I think that's Victor Olofsson's spot personally.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the thing. Like a lot of people are saying that Yuri Kulik is a higher upside, better version of Victor Olofsson. So if he can beat him out and you see what happens, but
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just stating that Victor Olofsson is on this roster right now.
For sure.
And if you intend on trading him, the only way you get the value you want is by playing him. And that's why I think he would start the season over Yuri Kulik, just for that fact alone.
No, I agree. I think they probably already tried to trade him and they were unable to, especially around the draft and free agency. So, yeah, there might not be a market given his contract and the fact that he's kind of a one-trick pony. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But I would say Kulik probably is the best chance, and then Savoy and Benson, and then you go down the line from there. But it'll be cool to see.
Lucas Rusek, who was in and out of the lineup as a call-up for the Sabres. He's been a good – I think he scored on his first shift. He definitely scored his first game. I think his first shift.
His first shift.
Has shown flashes, a good all-around player. We'll see. I don't know. But as right now, the forwards that will be at development camp, Zach Benson, Matteo Constantini, Riley Fiddler-Schultz, Aaron Hughlin, front of the program, Alexander Kisakov, Jacob Konechny. I'm going to butcher some names here, everybody. Viljami Marjala, Ethan Medima, Oliver Nadeau, Victor Neuchev, Noah Osland, Joel Rakovic Bernstein. Jake Richard, Steven Sardarian, Lawson Shirk, Linus Sodin, William Von. God damn it, Kevin Adams. These names.
This is a tough exercise.
Arnica,
I wouldn't kill yourself over this. Like this is
Anton Wahlberg.
difficult.
Well, I'm trying to pay some respect to the players. Anton Wahlberg, and on defense you got, Chris Yarndrick, Ryan Johnson, Sean Keone, Mats Lindgren, Albert Leixinen, Gavin McCarthy, I think Clarence native.
Yeah.
Nash Ninehouse, Nikita Novikov, Norwin Panuka, Nicholas Savoy, and Max Strebick. And in net, you're going to have Nathan Ari, Josh Fleming. Not this past draft, but the draft prior in 2022. Goalie Tobias Leinonen, I believe he was the second round pick. This year's goaltender that we took in this draft, Scott Ratzlaff. And then TJ, it's this last name, it's spelled SEMPTIMPHELTE. I'm not going to try it. I'll let you all who watching, you can try it. But that is your development camp roster, brought to you by Dwayne Stein. I'll hang up and listen. You can butcher me for the mispronunciation all you want. But that is your development camp roster.
Yeah.
That was
a lot of names there, as I said, from all over the world. So it's a diverse and talented.
We didn't even talk about Jacob Bryson when we were talking.
Yeah, I was going to say Jacob Bryson is another name, obviously. And given that Labushkin is gone, like he at least has like a puncher's chance. But given his build and his, I would say, lack of defensive awareness and skills in the D zone, I think that he has a pretty long shot of making the Rochester. The roster. I said the Rochester. He's likely going to be in Rochester. So
yeah, and you know what? I'm okay with it. Yeah. On skating ability, he has, that's his puncher's chance.
He's a very talented player, but I don't think he's an NHL defenseman.
It's all up here for that kid, and it's size. He's just not that you have to be big to be in the NHL these days. Like, I think guys like Cole Caulfield have proven that size sometimes doesn't matter if you have the skill. And I think he's a phenomenal skater, but I just don't think he has it all together up here, hockey IQ wise, to really compete for a starting position in this lineup. Other news today that broke this morning, and we'll end it on this, is concerning to say the least. We talked about it in our group chat. Some stuff came out about Terry Pegula today. On the heels of obviously a Bills loss, which we'll talk about right after this. But Terry Pegula kind of accused of essentially being a racist. There is a lawsuit pending against the NFL. What's his name again? I'm sorry.
Jim Trotter.
Jim Trotter, yes. Jim Trotter, making in this lawsuit, naming Terry Pegula as one of the owners who have taken steps essentially to, discriminate against people of color in the NFL, whether you're a player a player, executive, analyst, like he was with the NFL, like essentially just, calling out racism. And he quoted Terry Pegula as being one of the, he was one of two owners that were quoted, Jerry Jones being the other, but Terry Pegula, and again, these are allegedly his words, not ours. If these black people don't like it, they can go back to Africa and see how bad it is there. I don't know if that's verbatim, but still very damning, inexcusable, unacceptable rhetoric from not even just an owner, but anybody for that matter. But there's been other reports coming out, and I tweeted it out almost like I pressed send, and then I think seconds later, the Bills and Sabres came out with statements from Terry where he denounced all of it, said he's, absolutely appalled essentially that his name would be brought into this, that he's never said those things, and there's no place in today's society. What are your thoughts, Connor? I know we discussed it in the group chat, but I mean, I'll say this straight out. I have been one of the biggest critics of both Terry and his wife in the past. Everybody knows that. Like, I'm not shy about it. I genuinely have said in the past, I think in some way, shape, or form, the Sabres are for sale to an extent, some type of stake in the team. And I'm fine with that because I don't think that the Pegulas can handle running both franchises. But with that being said, Terry Pegula has always kind of seemed, he's not a very outspoken person. He doesn't speak in front of the media. He seems very reserved. I was talking to somebody again, talking to somebody whose name I won't say, but reserved, but also awkward. He says things, I think, without meaning. I'm not saying that's what this is, but at first, my first thought when I read this, I have a hard time wrapping my head around Terry Pegula saying something like that. I just do.
Yeah. Similar to the Mike Babcock situation, in the interest of not speculating too much,
yes,
given the fact that I wasn't in the room, I wasn't on that call. I have no idea. And I don't want to go down that road. It's obviously very concerning if
yes,
anyone were to have allegedly said that, especially an owner of, in this case, more relevantly, an NFL team compared to an NHL team. But just anyone in the community, anyone that represents both franchises, that would be a fireable offense, to say the least.
Without a doubt. Who was it with the Clippers? The owner of the Clippers?
Donald Sterling.
Now, granted, like, it was almost
by the way, a TMZ Sports exclusive back in the day.
Yeah, which was like, that whole thing was wild. They had him on tape too.
Yeah.
Right?
So, I mean, that's what this comes down to. If there is a recording of this, then any statement that the Sabres and Bills release today would automatically become even worse. So I don't know if there is, to be honest. I don't know anything, but they better hope that there's not.
Oh, this was released by Catherine Fitzgerald about 7 hours ago. It was a story behind the whole thing. But I'll pull it up on the screen here.
In this day and age, I know this from the line of work I'm in.
Yes.
There's usually a recording.
Yeah.
When something comes out, there's usually a video, especially when the story gains traction. Videos and recordings come out after the fact. So if it does exist, I wouldn't be surprised if it does see the light of day.
Yeah.
In which case, that would put the ownership of both the Bills and the Sabres into limbo.
Very, very difficult.
Would complicate matters for a variety of different reasons. So I'll say that. I would say that the Bills and the Sabres, and for everybody's sake, his family, fans of both teams, anyone really, they better hope that there's no recording of this. Because if there is, as you brought up with Donald Sterling, there could be a Donald Sterling situation.
Yep.
So
I have the article up right here. Let's just get rid of these ads and stuff. Titled it was shared by Catherine Fitzgerald on Twitter. It looks like it was written by Stephen Watson 7 hours ago. Lawsuit accuses Butler's co-owner Terry Pegula of making racist remarks. He denies claim. It goes on to say it was criticized. Buffalo Bills co-owner Terry Pegula criticized the rise of the National Football League player protests against racial injustice by saying unhappy black players should go back. We already covered that. Pegula, in a statement released by the team, said the comment attributed to him in the filing is absolutely false. I am horrified that anyone would connect me to an allegation of this kind, he said. Racism has no place in our society, and I'm personally disgusted my name is associated with this complaint. The remarks were included in a complaint filed against the NFL and NFL media in federal court by Jim Trotter, a former NFL media reporter who claims he was terminated after speaking out on the need to improve diversity and inclusion within the league. Trotter did not hear the alleged Pegula remark firsthand, but reported the account of someone else who did. So there's some more clarity, or not clarity, but context. So this isn't coming directly from Jim Trotter. It's, almost not a game of telephone, but I heard it from this person. Lawsuit includes purported examples of discrimination and retaliation, which were rampant in the highest levels of the NFL. Trotter said he first learned of Pegula's comment when another NFL media reporter mentioned it on a company-wide Zoom call in 2020. The reporter recalled the conversation during which Pegula spoke about the recent rise in social activism by NFL players and their support for the Black Lives Matter movement, the lawsuit states. The unidentified reporter shared on the call, according to Trotter's complaint, that Pegula has said, again, I won't repeat it, this remark was so offensive and racist that the people in the meeting appeared to be frozen, unsure of how to even react, Trotter said in the complaint. A league source told the Buffalo News that the alleged comment was thoroughly investigated, including interviews with Terry and his wife and co-owner Kim Pegula, who both denied the statement, and every other person at the dinner where this conversation purportedly took place. So apparently there was a dinner. Again, this is, just from glancing at this article, there was a dinner where this was said in front of a reporter, I'm guessing. Reporter then took it to a Zoom call, and then the Zoom call made it back to Jim Trotter. Sounds like that. Sounds like a lot of he said, she said. Again, I'm not going to speculate it's true. I'm not going to speculate it's not true. But I will say, as I started at the top of this conversation, my first reaction was, it's hard for me to wrap my head around a guy who doesn't like speaking out on much, seems very reserved, saying something like that. But with that being said, we've seen crazier. Again, I don't want to speak too much on it, but we'll just leave it at that. Let's leave it at that. Definitely concerning, to say the least. And I hope and pray that it's not true, because our society, as I tweeted out earlier, like, there's no place for that. Especially with the year that the city had, with that resulted directly from racism. We just don't need that at all, let alone right now. So moving on. But again, I'm sure there'll be more updates to that story to come. But moving on. Last night, I'm assuming you watched the game, Hurls.
No, I didn't watch what happened.
Huh?
I didn't watch what happened.
You didn't watch the game?
No, I didn't watch what happened.
No, you don't want to. You don't want to. You don't want to go down that road, huh?
No, I watched.
Yeah, no, I know you watched.
Yeah. Another tough pill to swallow. I'm still recovering from it, both physically, emotionally, mentally. Yeah, man. Yeah, there were questions about this team coming into this season, and I think no one thought that Josh Allen was going to be one of them. And for him to almost single-handedly lose the game.
I wouldn't say almost. He did.
To single-handedly lose the game in a situation where Aaron Rodgers, the champion of the offseason, one of the more stunning and impactful injuries in the history of the NFL, for that to happen in the same game, for him to go down without even attempting a pass, 4 plays in, for them to get up 13-3, be absolutely, I wouldn't say humming by any means, because the Jets defense is very good. He'd already thrown a pick before halftime. Mm-hmm. But for Josh to play outside of himself to the point where it looked like rookie year Josh Allen from 5 years ago, it felt like it was like a dream sequence. I honestly still can't believe it even happened. The entire game. You knew it was going to be a weird game. You knew it was going to be a crazy game. Somehow the Bills always make things interesting. But for that series of events to unfold the way that it did, is truly mind-boggling.
Mhm.
And I think you look on the bright side and you say, like, yeah, like it's week 1 and you're happy it happened when it did. I personally am. I think he can recover from this. But his press conference last night, you take it back to another Jets performance when Sam Darnold said it looked like he was seeing ghosts. It looked like Josh Allen was
had
broken.
a blank
He was
stare.
a broken man at that press conference.
Yeah.
He said he cost the team the game. He had this glazed look over his eye. He said these things before, and obviously they haven't fully changed yet, but he needs to grow up.
Dan Orlovsky said this.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm referencing, actually.
I totally agree with Dan's thoughts on it. Josh, as polarizing as he is, I don't think there's any arguing, man. He's the greatest athlete we've seen in a long time in Buffalo. Just we've seen him do things at court we've never seen a quarterback do before. The guy can run sideline to sideline, throw across his body, and still put the ball on a string. He runs like a gazelle. He leaps over people with ease. We haven't seen that from a quarterback.
No.
A guy who has all those tools in the toolbox. And the only tool missing to an extent, I'm not going to call him dumb, is what's going on up here. Like, if he can just, like, you know, imagine how good he would be. How much, not how good, but how phenomenally better he would be if he had, like, the mindset of, like, a Peyton Manning or a Brady.
Well,
like, just can think the game through.
Like, we saw it in the 13-second game. Like, his ceiling when he's firing on all cylinders is Patrick Mahomes, or arguably even greater, given his physical ability. Like, he's a better runner than Patrick Mahomes, and he arguably has a stronger arm. And if he makes the right decisions and plays within himself and doesn't smash all the buttons at the same time, I think the best example last night was one of the scrambles in the third quarter, I think, where he was 7 yards from the first down, and he tried to jump over 3 Jets defenders without a shred of a doubt that he was going to make it to the first down line.
No chance.
Rather than sliding, rather than going down, or even one time he could have easily got out of bounds and he, like, lowered his shoulder into the defender like he was Thurman Thomas in the 90s. Like, nothing about what he said he was going to do or what the coaching staff has preached or anything else translated to last night. Like, maybe he was, like, caught up in the bright lights of the big stage. He wanted to prove a point, especially with Aaron Rodgers going down. But that's him being selfish. That's him trying to be the Madden cover guy, to be the guy that is now dating an A-list actor. Everything about that performance last night honestly felt very selfish from his perspective, which is really, it's shitty to say because we all love him. Like, the guy has done so much for this community, changed the course of the franchise. But last night, aside from his rookie season and maybe even 2019, was the single worst performance of his career. Probably the worst given where he's at in his career right now. And it's got to change really quickly. Otherwise, like, this season could be over really, really quick.
Yeah. And you try and find silver linings. There are silver linings in that game. How about the fact that he played his worst game of his career and you still lost in overtime against the best defense in the league? Sure, that's a silver lining. Leonard Floyd looked great. Gregory Rousseau looked great.
Stephon Diggs wanted out of Buffalo. Looks incredible.
Looks fantastic. Dalton Kincaid looks like an absolute beast. And then you have Cook. James Cook looks great. When they utilized him the correct way, looked great. But you're still asking the same questions outside of what we just talked about. And
then another good point that was brought up, Ken Dorsey obviously is receiving a lot of heat, but it doesn't seem like, obviously the creativity is not there. It's not what it was with Brian Daboll. The relationship's not quite where it's at. But he doesn't seem like he's coordinating Josh Allen. It doesn't seem like he's coaching him to the point where he doesn't feel like he needs to do these things. On all 3 interceptions, he could have taken the check down. He could have ran for the first down or out of bounds, punted it away. The Bills would have won the game without question if he had not forced it into double or triple coverage all 3 times because he thought he could make the play. similar to what he did in the Vikings game when he tried to force it in the end zone after an elbow injury. It makes you question if the elbow is completely healthy. I hope that it is a UCL injury, especially for someone throwing the ball. You see it a lot of time with major league pitchers who eventually get Tommy John surgery. It's a very troubling injury. It's not easy to come back from. And I don't think that they would hide that type of thing. And he has had significant amount of time off this offseason, but he didn't look like quite the same guy with quite the same zip that he has previously. So I pray that everything's all right. But if he goes out there against the Raiders on Sunday and does similar types of things, this fan base and the media is going to turn on him really, really quickly. And It's not going to be pretty.
No, it's not. Listen, I to the point you just made, I want to transition to that is we as goalies know what it's like to go down that rabbit hole when you're not playing well, right? Like it's so hard to overcome. Obviously, the season didn't end the way you wanted. The second half of this season, coming off like his first 7 games where he was like, I think if you took the vote right then and there, he was winning MNF MVP like the first half of the season. And then an injury happens. He plays through it, ups and downs, emotional roller coasters. And then you get absolutely, plowed by Cincy in the playoffs. Listen, I know what it's like to get inside your own head, and it's almost like that quote from The Replacements, Keanu Reeves, when they ask him, "What's your greatest fear?" And he says, "Quicksand." Like, when you're just sinking and you don't know how to dig yourself out, quicksand. I look at Josh Allen and I feel like he's in a little bit of quicksand right now, and he's trying to find a way out of it. Maybe not to that extent, but his issues are not physical. It's not accuracy. It's not ability. It's literally upstairs. And how do you get out of your own head? And to your point, Ken Dorsey, does this include him coming out of the booth, coming down on the field, coaching Josh from the field? Like,
I mean, you saw it multiple times last night. McDermott was looking at him like, be smart. Like, every time a ball is snapped, I have like a kind of like superstitious tradition where I say like, be smart, Josh. Like, that's all he has to do is just be smart and take the play. Even that fumble after the Jets went down and scored, Garrett Wilson's like unbelievable catch. First play, it was a motion right in front of him. He was potentially going to do an RPO, and he looked away before he caught the ball. One of the most athletic dudes in the world looked away, and he missed. And then he got it back, and then he fumbled again. Mm-hmm. So he clearly was so rattled to the point where his brain was not working.
No.
And honestly, even if he comes out and throws for 350 yards, 4 touchdowns, runs for another one, no picks, no bad decisions on Sunday against the Raiders,
Forget about
that's not necessarily what's going to inspire confidence. They are probably a bottom 5 defense in the league. So no, honestly, like I'll be happy about it. Of course, they need to win the game. It's almost a must win at this point. But he's going to need to do that against the Commanders the week after on the road against one of the best defensive lines in football. He's going to need to continue to do this and make smart decisions against good defenses, because the 3 worst games that he's had in the past year and a half are all against the Jets.
Yep.
Arguably one of the best defenses in the league. So, of course, I want him to get right against the Raiders, but that's not what's going to make me feel good about him.
Yeah. Well, it's going to make you feel better for sure.
But at this point, like, do we want a regular season
rebound off a
performance
loss
against the Raiders at home in the home opener, or do we want to see him?
It's not even just rebounding off a loss. It's just a rebounding off a loss like that, because that wasn't like a normal loss. Like, it's not like when we lost that one Monday night game against Tennessee at the goal line off a fumble, like, because everything before that, Josh was playing well. At no point, I think maybe there were 2 or 3 drives in this game where Josh looked good. Like, Josh looked like good.
I mean, the
final drive of regulation.
Yeah.
I think I'd say the opening, not the opening drive, but the second drive that led to the Stephon Diggs touchdown.
Yeah.
There's one other drive in there. But, rebounding off a loss like this, that, again, led to that post-game interview where we have heard those things from before, but you just saw the blankness in his face. It's like he didn't have any answers. It's going to make me feel a lot better because you got to get him mentally right. And, sometimes playing against a very, very below subpar defense in the Raiders, hopefully get that chemistry flowing. We already saw he definitely has it with Stephon Diggs. He absolutely had it with Kincaid. I thought, the balls he threw to Kincaid were on the mark. I'd like to see them use him more in the middle of the field, not just on the sidelines, because that's where, he played phenomenally well, as a slot guy in college. But Gabe Davis, that guy, you got to get him going. Hardy, a guy you brought in to be your speedster, got to get that guy going. And McDermott even said today when they asked the question, he was just like, do you need about his thoughts on a second wide receiver to complement Diggs? He's like, yeah, we need that. Yeah. And I don't know if that was insinuating that we don't have that right now on Gabe Davis, or if that's him trying to light a fire under Gabe Davis. Yeah, you need that complement. And you need your offensive line to start stepping up and playing better. Spencer Brown, inexcusable false start in overtime. Inexcusable. Regardless how much
he's arguably the weakest link on the entire team.
Yeah, he just hasn't panned out, and Bean has not had a good track record of drafting on the lines. He just hasn't.
Torrance looked good though, which is good. Osiris Torrance, the starting right guard.
Yeah, yes, for sure. But we've just seen, we've seen too many misses from him since drafting Josh Allen, at least in the first few rounds. Elam, healthy scratch. That guy needs to be in your starting lineup in his rookie season, and he's a healthy scratch too.
Thankfully, Christian Benford looked great. So
yes. So,
if you miss on one, thankfully you hit in the 6th round. But yeah, man. With that being said, I'm personally going to hammer the Bills minus 9.5. I feel like this is potentially going to be one of those insane blowouts that we've come accustomed to in recent years, especially coming off a loss like that. They're going to, in my opinion, have no mercy. And I could be wrong, but I personally don't think the Raiders are very good. They barely beat the Broncos, who I believe are not great at all. So we'll see what happens. But
yeah,
I think it's going to be a good day, Sunday afternoon, Sunday morning here. And then we can move on.
Yeah, for sure. Final thoughts.
I think that's it for me. About a month left. Sabres season coming up soon. We might need it if the Bills are not performing the way that we expect them to. And going into both seasons, I've said it before, I'm way more excited for the Sabres regular season than I am the Bills, because the Bills regular season at this point is somewhat irrelevant until they perform in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I can't wait for development, prospect camp and training camp to see who makes the team. Devin Levi mainly, as we've mentioned many times. It's going to be amazing to see the progress that he's made this summer, especially with some of the videos that we've seen from his goaltending school in the past few weeks. So yeah,
Listen, I still have the save of the offseason. I don't care what he says.
Yeah, he absolutely does. So yeah, I'm so unbelievably excited to watch the Sabres. Can't wait. Yeah. Got a month left, so everybody else should start getting excited too.
You said you're going to be in town for the home opener, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well,
we're going to be there.
We've already got our tickets, so you better get to that game. We can sure fucking.
Yeah, we'll get there. We got some connections back home, so yeah, we'll figure it out
for sure. I don't have much left other than, again, can't wait to start development camp. I'll try and get down there and watch some of the drills and scrimmages like I did last year. It was a good time, and then obviously training camp in itself should be fun. I'm sure they'll do the blue and gold game like they normally do. You get a good look at what the rosters and the competitiveness is going to look like heading into night one come October 12th. So with that being said, this has been episode 138 of Two Goalies, One Mic, brought to you by Outlet Liquor, the place to buy a case on George Urban Boulevard. When you get over there, tell them the boys from Two Goalies, One Mic sent you, and they'll take care of you. I am Duane for Hurls. we will talk to you next week.